In this HMIS training video, I'm going to be covering how to create a program entry in HMIS. Creating a program entry should be one of the first things completed with a client when they are new to your caseload. A program entry should be created once you start providing services for a client, and this indicates to the system that the client is receiving services through your program and is where most of the data for clients is collected. To begin creating a program entry for your client, we want to navigate to the client's program entry exit tab. Next, we want to click on the button that says add entry exit. From there, we want to click on the drop down next to type and select HUD, and then click save and continue in the bottom right hand corner. Then we want to answer all of the questions within the program entry. Within some program entries, there might be multiple tabs under select an assessment. If that's the case, there might be some additional internal assessments that need to be completed. For those, you would complete one program entry, click save, and then click on the tab to complete the next assessment. For this program entry, we're going to go through and answer all of these questions. If your client has had a previous program entry in another project, or for instance, completed a coordinated assessment, then all of their data will be entered and will carry over into your program entry. But that does not mean that we want to scroll down and click save and exit. We always want to go through the program entry with the client and double check all of the data and correct any information that needs to be so we have the most up-to-date information. So I'm going to go through this program entry. Up at the top, we have client's date of birth, so we'll leave that the same, race, ethnicity, and gender. If any of those were not entered correctly for whatever reason, you can always update that as well. And the first question we're going to revisit is, does the client have a disabling condition? I'm going to click on that drop down and select yes. The next question we see is relationship to head of household. Anytime you are working with a single adult, then this question will always be self head of household. If you are ever working with families, then you would see the other household members underneath the household members on the left, and there will be a separate tab for each one so that we can create the program entry and complete all the information for each client within the household. Next, we see enrollment COC. We're always going to answer this question as Austin Travis County. If you are working with any clients that might be fleeing domestic violence or something, then it might be surrounding counties, but otherwise it will be Austin Travis County. Next, we have the housing move-in date piece, which is super crucial for housing providers to enter. This is where we're indicating when clients are moving from homelessness into housing. So this is a really important data element. Most of the time, though, the housing move-in date will typically be entered under the interim update, except for in specific circumstances, which we'll address in a future video that goes in depth into housing move-in date. So for this program entry, we are going to leave that blank for now. The next question we have is prior living situation. This is indicating where the client was staying right before they entered into your program. So I'm going to click on this drop down, and I'm going to say that this client was experiencing homelessness before they entered into our program and that they were staying outside. So I'm going to click on place not meant for habitation. The next question is asking how long they were staying in that prior living situation, so how long they were staying outside. And typically, coordinated assessors, what they'll do is they'll track this on a piece of paper and kind of backtrack with the client. So we'll have a future video where we'll go in depth into how to capture this history of homelessness. But just for the sake of this training video, I'm just going to go through what these questions are indicating. So for this example, I'm going to say that this client was staying outside for, we'll say 6 months. So I'm going to click 90 days or more, but less than 1 year. And then I'm going to go back 6 months from this date. So I'm going to click on my calendar app and go back. So it'll be about November 2023. Next, regardless of where they stayed last night, number of times the client has been on the streets, in emergency shelter, or shelter in the past 3 years, including today. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to say that this client experienced homelessness 3 times. And total number of months homeless, on the street, and emergency shelter, or safe haven in the past 3 years. I'm going to click on this and say that they were experiencing homelessness for a total of 12 months across those 3 episodes. The next section we are going to be completing is the income section. And for each of these sections, we're going to complete these the same way. So the best way to make sure that we fully complete all of the data for each of the next sections is to click on this link that's called HUD verification. Sometimes staff want to click the add button and add income there, click on the magnifying glass. And you can do it that way, but oftentimes you will miss some of your data, which can impact data quality for your agency. So instead, we want to click on this link that's titled HUD verification. And if any of these bubbles are ever left under data not collected or incomplete, we always want to make sure that we move those over to no, because those will ding your data quality reports. If those are left under data not collected or incomplete, essentially what it's indicating to the system is that that question wasn't asked at all for that income source. And so I'm going to say that this client is receiving income now. They're receiving Social Security income. So I'm going to click on the pencil next to SSI. And we want to go ahead and put an end date for the record that was created originally. And your end date's always just going to be the day before you're entering this data. So I'm entering this data on April 5th. So I'm going to put an end date as April 4th, 2024. I'm going to click save. The system knows something's going on, drags this over to incomplete. And now I'm going to select yes, that they are receiving Social Security income now. And the start date will populate for us to April 5th, 2024. And now we can enter the Social Security income amount. So I'm going to enter this as $836 a month and then click save in the bottom right-hand corner. And I'm going to scroll down and click exit in that bottom right-hand corner. And these can be really easy to miss, these drop downs. So next to income from any source, we want to change this no to a yes to indicate that the client is now receiving income. Next, we have a date income verified. So this would be the date that we have some kind of documentation to support that the client is receiving that income. I'm going to say that we received that on April 5th as well. So I'm going to put that date in. The next blank we have is total monthly income. So this is where we would add up multiple income sources if the client is receiving that. I'm going to say that this client is just receiving the Social Security income. So I'm going to enter this as $836 a month. And we'll continue this through the rest of the sections. So we'll do this process the same way. So the next section is non-cash benefits. So this is where we would ask the client, are you currently receiving any non-cash benefits like SNAP or food stamps? So I'm going to click on the HUD verification link again. And I'm going to say that this client is now receiving SNAP benefits. So I want to make sure that all of these bubbles are under no. And then I want to click the pencil next to SNAP. And again, we want to put an end date for what had originally been answered here by a previous agency. And so we just want to put the day before the data is being entered. So I'm going to put April 4th, 2024. I'm going to click save. The system is going to drag this over to incomplete. And now I can click yes. I'm going to click save here just to take a look at it, make sure it's entered correctly, and then click the pencil next to SNAP again. And so now we do have the start date as today for receiving SNAP. And then also we want to enter the amount in SNAP that they are receiving. So I'm going to enter 196 and then click save in the bottom right-hand corner. And then I'm going to click exit in that bottom right-hand corner. I want to again change this no to a yes because the client is now receiving SNAP benefits. And so we always want this drop down to match whatever is entered within this HUD verification. So that can be a data element that can be a little bit trickier too. So you always want to make sure that those match and are accurate. The next section we have is health insurance. So similarly, we want to click on the HUD verification link here. And then I'm going to say that this client is receiving Medicaid. So I'm going to click this pencil next to Medicaid. I'm going to put the end date as the day before I'm entering this data for the previous answer here. I'm going to put April 4th, 2024. I'm going to click save in the bottom right-hand corner. And then I'm going to select yes next to Medicaid and click the save button in the bottom right. I'll click the pencil next to Medicaid just to make sure everything is answered. So this all looks correct and we don't need to add anything additionally here. So I'll click save in that bottom right-hand corner and then click exit in that bottom right. Next, I'm going to click the drop down next to covered by health insurance and change this to a yes. So that matches what is entered in the HUD verification. The last section is disabilities here. So I'm going to click on the HUD verification link again in the disability section. And for this section, these are all of the HUD considered disabilities. And so usually when I'm going through this section, especially if the client is new to working in my program, I'm not super familiar with their case, I typically like to go through each one of these disabilities just to make sure we don't miss anything that the client might have. And so I'll usually go through this list, ask the client if they have any history of alcohol abuse or drug abuse, if they have any chronic health conditions like asthma, high blood pressure, diabetes, if they have any developmental disabilities, if they have any diagnosis of HIV or AIDS, if they have any mental health issues like depression, anxiety, PTSD, and lastly, if they have any physical disabilities. So typically like to go through that list, and then for sort of broader categories, kind of popping in examples there, just so we don't miss any disabilities the client might have. So I'm going to say that this client does have a disability. I'm going to say that they have a mental health disorder. So I'm going to click on the pencil next to mental health. And then these questions can be kind of confusing as far as how they're answered. So I'm going to read this out loud. But first, before we do that, we do want to put an end date here for what was originally answered. So I'm going to put April 4th, 2024. Click save. It wants me to answer that, so I'll do that. And then I'm going to click yes next to mental health. And so this question says, if yes, expected to be of long continued and indefinite duration and substantially impairs ability to live independently. So we always do want to answer this question as yes if the client does have the disability. One reason for that is because if we do answer this question as no, the system will not count this as a disability at all. The other reason is because it's not stated in this question, but in the data standards manual, it says something along the lines of if this client were in housing, they would better be able to care for their disability. So that's going to be everyone. So we want to answer that question as yes. So once both of these questions are answered, we can click save in the bottom right-hand corner, and we would complete this the same way for any other disabilities that the client has. And then I'm going to click exit in the bottom right-hand corner. The next question is here around domestic violence. So we would ask the client, are you a victim or survivor of any domestic violence? I'm going to answer this question as no. The next question asks, if yes, for a survivor of domestic violence, when did that last occur? Within the past 3 months, 3 to 6 months ago, 6 to 12 months ago, or more than a year ago. I'm going to leave this as not a victim. If either of these questions were answered as yes, we would need to ask the next question, which is, are you currently fleeing that situation, yes or no? So I'm going to answer this as no. I'm going to scroll down and save. And the reason we ask these questions, one is because if a client is not experiencing literal homelessness, but they are fleeing a domestic violence situation, they are still eligible for housing referrals. And then also so we can connect the client with any resources for people that are fleeing domestic violence. So in our community, that's mostly Safe Place or Hope Alliance. So once those questions are answered, those are current living situation and date of engagement. Those sections are not required unless you are working in a street outreach capacity. So this is a rapid rehousing entry, so we're not going to answer that section. Same thing for these next two sections. These are just for coordinated entry staff. And then these next questions are not currently required anymore. These say retired. So last question that's required is asking about highest level of education that the client has achieved. So we're going to choose an answer here. I'm going to say currently enrolled but not attending regularly. And then it's going to ask basically for the highest level of education. So I'm going to choose, we'll say, pursuing bachelor's degree. And then general health status, this is where we answer this question. So I'm going to select good and then click save and exit in the bottom right-hand corner. And now the program entry is completed, and this is really the bulk of the data entry that we gather.